Hey guys, welcome to another tutorial on Paint Tool Sai from Comic Con PK. So don't forget to subscribe to our Facebook page, YouTube page, Twitter page, Instagram page. And I'm a bit down for the count because I've got a sore throat, and also um, I've got like a spinal injury, a minor spinal injury. So I'm taking a little bit rest and using my laptop from my bedroom. So pray for me, guys, and hope to see you soon. On with the tutorial. So let's start with the previous illustration. Here we have the sphere. Let's turn off. Okay. So let's create a new layer set. It's like grouping a layer in Photoshop, and I'm going to like drag and drop all the layers. Now when we drag and drop all the layers, make sure the sequence always remains the same. Signature on top, inking below that, color, and then shadows. And I'm going to name this and turn the layer off. Name this layer as layer group as sphere. So turn it on and off. If you click on it, it opens up and all the other layers inside the group layer are visible or cascadable. So this was the initial Apple reference that we drew, and I'm going to create a line work layer, and I'm going to create another layer. Maybe bring the then bring the opacity down of the illustration layer a little bit, and I'm going to draw a ink version of the apple. Again, I'm going to create rough lines and I'm going to join them. So joining a layer is very easy. Joining a vector shape is very easy. The shortcut is Shift and Control. As soon as you Control Shift and drag and drop from one point to the other, the layer, the vector shape gets joined, and you can clean it. Use the Control key to move individual points. You can even add points. The Alt key erases points. And try to be loose with your illustrations. It's okay if you are not very well in like drawing these points. You can always edit the points later on. So try to do the best you could do. And if you press the shift key between 2 points, you can always deform and refine the shape of the vector line. So I'm going to create another line, and I'm following the flow. It really doesn't matter if your the inking is completely on top of the drawing. It's just like it has to come close to the edge. Do not take steps that you click, drag, and draw each point one by one using a mouse clicker, because that's going to take a lot of time. And since we are very short on time and we want to finish this quickly, we use the brush or the pen tablet instead of the mouse. Okay, so I'm pretty much now satisfied with the shape of the apple. I sure hope that I would have actually gotten a reference. So let me see if I can get a reference. Let me just pause the video after I'm doing. Let me see if I can pause the video. Okay, so let's see now. Okay. Yeah, I think I don't have to look for a reference on Gmail on Google. Sorry, Google. So it always helps to have like a reference image. I personally use real objects. So I go to the grocery store and buy an apple. So since we're in a little bit of a time crunch and we have to make a lot of other videos, this weekend. So let's skip with the reference file maybe for now, but it's always a good thing. And let's draw the leaf. So I'm all drawing the leaf from imagination. So it's totally up to you, the flow or the look of the leaf. Still, I would say I'm about 80% satisfied or 70% satisfied with the shape of the leaf. And let's see now. Okay, so Control Shift and click and drag, add. I'm increasing the width, the pressure sensitivity, or you call it. Now I'm going to select the eraser tool and erase this portion that's overlapping, and I'm going to now check and see if all the other points are in line, and there's a little bit offset on the right side. I'm going to turn the reference layer off. Yeah, let me just pause 1 minute. Okay, so I'm back. Okay, so I'm going to add the same way using the marquee brush tool. I'm going to add the details. I'm going to click select the shape so it's closed, and it looks more like a cherry from the top. I'm still not very much convinced, but let's just work with it. Let's see if we can improve on the slope of the cherry or the design of the cherry. So take the selection marquee tool, reduce the brush size, and go back. Okay, so pretty much the fill region has been selected. You can now use the airbrush tool or the pen tool to add the color. I am now going into the raster layer, and let me just pause 1 more minute. I'm still not sure with this. Okay, so I think now I've got it. I do believe that if I add highlights and shadows in this apple, I'll need a reference. So let me see if I have my reference. Let's just try to do this first manually, like add some colors on the okay, so selection, add selection points, clean this region up, and okay, so we're good. Now this technique that I'm going to try is mostly like what oil painters and acrylic painters use. They add in splotches of color and they just keep on adding more detail. So let's try to figure that thing out. Okay, so the marquee selection is selected, and you can see these small little ant lines. This means that the selection is active, and this is the apple reference that I picked. You can pick any other, but I just like the crispy color and the texture on both sides, and there are two reflections. So there's a primary light and there's a secondary light. The primary light is on the left side and the secondary light. Now I do not like the dimension of this apple because it's not matching the dimension of that apple. So I'm going to quickly fix this small little error in the shape of the apple. So I'm going to create an outline, circular outline for the top region, and I think I might erase the branch and the leaf, and maybe try to build on the branch and the leaf in another way. So I'm going to add like a circular ellipse on top, so that you can see that the upper region is covered, and I'm going to now clean it up. So I'm using the Alt key and the Control key and Control Shift Alt to delete extra vector lines that I don't need, and I'm fairly now satisfied with this. Okay, move some portions. So it all takes experience in tweaking, looking at the reference image time after time. So I'm skipping between the image one after the other. Now, when I'm skipping very quickly. It's because I have narrowed my focus. It won't happen with you guys in the first time you do an illustration like this. So try to be patient and maybe like look at the reference for a longer period. Okay, so I'm now retouching the ellipse and I'm moving some points. So there are a lot of phrases about apples, and there's the biblical reference about apples, where the key reason that Adam was kicked out of heaven, and there's the other references of about the benefits of eating apples. I normally eat an apple a day. I do recommend that all of you people start eating healthy, though I don't look like I'm healthy. Well, I'm big boned. But eating apples really helps, and we have some very wonderful varieties in our country. If anybody is interested in traveling and visiting the country, Pakistan, we have, I think, like 4 or 5 different varieties of apple, or maybe like I don't know, maybe like nine or six or something. But we do have a lot of varieties of apples here in Pakistan. But I'm no I'm no agriculturist to tell you the apples and oranges type of thing. But I do the family. I mean, like I don't do most of the grocery shopping. My family does. So whenever I go out grocery shopping, I get like a huge list, and it's always like 2 different types of apple. One for juicing, one for normal eating, and one for salads. So yeah, my family is extremely conscious about salads. I mean, like my aunt and my sister is extremely conscious about having salads. I, on the other hand, am a meat freak, and of course, I like to mix and match. I mean, like I don't just eat meat. I mix up veggies and meat together. So it's all about moderation, and I think the phrase that apple a day does keep the doctor away. So let me know what type of apples you like to eat, any varieties in the comment section. And also, I eat the whole apple. I don't leave like the middle region with like the pits and the seeds. I eat the apple whole along with the branch. Sometimes I just flick it out or throw it into the bin. So the only thing that I don't eat in the apple is the branch. And I heard on someone's page on YouTube that eating the apple whole is, I think, the right way to eat an apple. I mean, like there was like some random blogs, random video logs that told that you can eat apples. So back to the drawing. I'm rounding off. So I'm adjusting the points. I'm still not really that much satisfied. Maybe, yeah, maybe if I reduce the thickness or the width thickness, yeah, I think if I reduce the thickness, maybe this might work. Okay, so it really will take you some time. I mean, like Rome wasn't built in one day, but give it some time. Take your time, and it's really not necessary that you guys use the same Apple reference. that I'm using, try a different apple, maybe even a green apple, or maybe even a psychedelic purple apple, or blue apple, or a yellow apple. I mean, there are so many different variations. I don't think I've ever seen a purple apple or a blue apple, but maybe some geneticist or someone has maybe like developed some kind of an alternate breed of apples. So looks pretty okay. Let me just move these points a little bit, maybe move the dimensions and the flow, the tangents a little bit more, and maybe bring the thickness, pen thickness, down a little bit. So yeah, this looks more suitable now. The pen thickness is not visible. You can see the roundness of the apple, the branch. Let's draw the branch now. Okay, so the branch is coming from this direction, so I'm fairly like loosely eyeballing the branch and how it should look in a three-dimensional space. Again, it's being hidden over here, and the back region needs to be erased. So let's see. Yeah, so let's erase this back region and probably bring it smoother, make it thicker, make it smoother, bigger, faster, smoother. So now let's add the leaf. So the leaf is sort of like out of the frame, so I'm just going to imagine the leaf's dimensions. Add a branch. Okay. Too wide. Alright. Let's bring it down a notch. Bring it back a notch. Looks okay now. No? Yep. Okay. Fairly good enough. Yeah. So bring it down. Take it. So just take your time. It really doesn't matter if the leaf is exactly the way. It has to be close enough, like 90% or 85% close to the original shape. And it's smooth the points a little bit, reduce the size, and I think this looks good. Still the angle looks a bit slightly slanted off, but yeah, I mean, like, you can always play with something. You don't have to actually get the reference down to the bare minimum or the bare exact the exact shape and the exact dimension of the leaf. So add the leaves vein, the main vein. You don't have to add the main vein detail unless you want to. It's totally up to you. But the reason that I'm showing you this is that Sai has this wonderful vector inking tool, and it has helped me numerous times. So now I'm going to just add the detail of the fill. So I'm going to select the inner portion. Oh yes, I forgot to erase the back side of the shape. So now add the selection area, and oops, I think there is, oh yes, some points are missing. So let's close this up, close this gap, so that the selection Paint Magic Wand Brush tool gets selected, and sort of like clean up the illustration a little bit further. There we have it. So let's go for the selection area again. 1, 2, and 3. Add more, and there we have it. So that's it. Now add, maybe like clean up a little bit. Add some overlap, having selection. Paint in some more selection area. Okay, so go to the vector layer, the raster layer, and now just start adding colors. So use the airbrush tool or use the pen tool. I think pen tool is much more, and it's okay if you add the red color initially and then add the green color for the. It's all about imagination. Trying to bring the colors as close to the original reference. I haven't looked at the original reference for a while now, so I'm going to like add the colors first, and then I'm going to go back to the original reference. Okay, so the branches look okay. The leaves has some tiny like yellow spots and like lighter tones of green and some darker tones of green. So I'm going to add the dark tones, and I'm going to just loosely add them. You know, the reason that I'm adding these loosely darker tones is I'm going to show you how I can actually quickly use the blur tool or the blur brush tool, and now I'm going to add some yellow spots. Okay, oops, this is too big. Let's bring the brush size down, and yeah, there we have it. So now let's start with the apple. Now quickly keep on viewing the apple. Now look at the highlights. The highlight is really highly detailed from the top. It might take me a couple of tries to add the highlight. I'm going to use the pen tool and add some highlights. Okay, so I tried the airbrush tool first, and it's looking fairly decent. Okay, now add the highlights on top. There we go. And I'm loosely adding the highlights on the top. It's just like a watercolor, like an oil painting or an acrylic painting. Mind you, I haven't worked that much on acrylic paintings over the past few years, although one of my best instructors and mentor and teacher used to teach us in acrylic paints, but she recommended that instead of me buying acrylic paints, because acrylic paints at those times were really expensive, and it wasn't like a good medium for beginners. It was always a good medium for like experienced artists, and she recommended I use pastel because it also gives the same effect, and it overlaps. You can overlap like two different colors to create like a multitude of variations of those two colors. So I'm now figuring out where the highlights are, where the shadows are, trying to play around with the blur tool, trying to play around with the other color swatches, and maybe like bring in a darker tone or a pinkish tone of red and black. Add some highlights, add some shadows on the side, and I added some really dark tones in the center for this really splotchy portion in the back side. Add some more white. Now I'm using the brush, the pen tool, and I'm just adding random white areas. I'm going to smoothen this out, and you'll see in a short while why the blur tool is so very quick. And the reason mostly is that Sai is a very small software, small size software, so it doesn't really need that much processing or caching. So that's why compared to Photoshop, this is an ideal tool for like coloring and inking, whereas you can use Photoshop for like penciling and like getting the results done. And some of the students still prefer to use Sai. It's also, Sai is the tool of choice for artists who have actually gone to a certain level, and they don't want to actually use Photoshop for Photoshop tools, because a lot of old school artists, they still believe that drawing and drawing practice turns a really good artist into a great artist or a great illustrator. So the my advice is also, and I am also from that school of thought, the more practice you do, the more better you'll be. I mean, you can look at here that I drew the apple's design without any referencing, because I have been doing this for a very long time, and it will come to you. It will take time. And also the texture on the tablet and the pencil and paper texture, they're totally different, so you will have to maybe like figure that out on your own. But once you do, life is really going to be very easy for you. So I'm now going to use the pen tool, and I'm just figuring out, okay, using the airbrush tool altogether was not a good approach, so I'm just using the pencil tool, and I'm slightly reducing the opacity up and down and trying to make sense of it all. Maybe add some more detail with the reds. Okay, so now let's see. Let's try the blur tool. Okay, so I'm sorry. So it has a harsh or a hard highlight on the top, and it has a very soft and mellow touch at the bottom. So let's try. I'm softening it up and making it look hard. Okay, so there we have it. And now I'm moving down. So even right now when I'm looking at it, I still think that I can add more detail, but it's always a process. Even after like taking a pause at your drawing and you're looking at it and you say, oh, I missed some highlights, I missed some details, but it's fairly okay. It takes time. It takes some also when you're actually painting like this, take some time out. Look, take some time out. Take a half an hour break, take an hour break, and come back again and see your drawing, and maybe there might be a new fresh perspective. So it's always like when you're actually totally narrowed in onto an illustration, there are some times when you miss out on the overall picture or overall painting or the overall image. So it's always good to actually take some time out and go back and then come back again and then work on it further. It's not like you're wasting time. I mean, like a lot of managers and like editors, they say stop wasting your time, and you tell them, okay, I'm taking a coffee break because art is hard. Definitely art is very hard, and especially illustrations is very hard because you're painting stuff, and painting is not like you're not painting like children's painting like a 5-year-old. You're painting like a true professional, a painter or an illustrator, digital illustrator. So it takes time, and you need to take time, give yourself some break, then come back again. So now I'm just cleaning up using the blur tool, and I would say that it's pretty much looking close to the illustration. I mean, like, it's coming very well, close enough to the photograph, sorry, not the illustration. So it's coming close to the photograph, and I'm really impressed by the highlights, although I have a lot of way to go as far as detail is concerned. So I'm just going to slowly and gradually build up on this detail, and it takes time. You can't hurry it up like in 45 minutes or an hour. Give it a couple of hours in the first try. Don't do it willy-nilly. Don't do it in a hurry. I tell this to my students a lot. It's not a one-day task. It's an entire process, and the very first time you do it, you need to give it a good solid 7 or 8 hours, or maybe like 10-12 hours. You don't have to do it in the first go. And yes, using a tablet always helps. Never go home without a tablet, I would say. Okay, so it's looking fairly close to the apple. I sure hope I can add more detail, and I can add more shadows. Let's play around some more. Okay. By this time, I think everybody is going to sleep. Watching these tutorial videos is also very, very tiring. I normally keep a cup of coffee with me when I'm doing this, and I hope that you're also like me, a coffeeaholic, and you use a lot of coffee. So all that is left is to add the yellow dots or the yellow bits. I'm going to smooth the leaf now, and you can see in a couple of minutes it's going to look like it's like a realistic looking leaf, although the yellow dashes and the yellow lines, they'll also get merged. So that was a big mistake, but it's also helping. For example, you can see that it's merging, the green and the yellow is merging and creating like a textured effect on the leaf. So that's pretty awesome also. And I'm cleaning up the behind portion of the apple and sort of like smoothing out the highlights. Mind you, when you're doing animation, you don't have to actually take care of this much detail. It's mostly like simplistic highlights. So this is something very advanced, like you can take it further and you can like have digital illustrations made on like using oil styles and oil textures. You can do a lot of things, and it depends on if you're going for a hyper realistic look or if you're going for a stylized look, and there are 1001 styles that you can create, and using those styles you can also create animations also. So I'm now going to select the colors, yellow highlight colors, and just go tap and bring down the opacity down maybe to 80%. Yep. So 80 or 90, I think. Yeah, 90 would do. So I'm just adding based on the flow of the apple, or the three-dimensional direction of the apple, these dots. And let's see, give it a few minutes and you will see a whole world of difference. So now it looks like a very captivating and very alluring looking apple. It's still not close to the original. You can keep practicing and keep working hard at it, and perfection, there's no such thing as perfection. If you've actually created perfection, that means you've created a photograph, and there's no point in actually illustrating a photograph. So my advice is never go for perfection. Also, this exercise might actually help you guys in doing some live illustrations using light sources and shadows and highlights. So this can be like a future project that we can do, that we can have like some fruits and vegetables, and we can place them, and every student can bring out their laptops and tablets and maybe draw using digital illustration. So I'm now adding the yellow dots onto the leaf also, and I think we are almost done with the highlights. Okay, I'm just touching up, very looking to see if I miss some apple, if I miss some dots on the apple, and I think that's good enough. I'm going to create another layer, and this is the shadow layer, and I think that's the shadow is slightly coming out of there. So I'm going to use the airbrush tool and go to the apple layer, deselect it so that I am not painting over the apple area, and I'm going to slowly and gradually add the shadow in the new layer. And it's really not necessary. You can play around with the color scheme of the shadow. I mean, like, it doesn't have to be totally black. You can add some blues, purples. Let's experiment with that. Let's just first work on the apple. I'm going to add some more detail on the apple shape and the base of the apple, so that it's like landing on the shadow and creating like this three-dimensional effect of like shadow being casted way at the base of the apple. And let's try to add some blue. There we go. So it's looking really opposite, like it's called complementary colors, that you create a red apple and then you create the shadow in blue. And I'm adding some now reddish purples. I'm also extending the shadow. I'm not very much keen on follow the shape of or the drawing as is, and try to bring some of your style or personality into it. You don't have to follow the drawing as is. I'm now thinking maybe the shadow is sort of like bleeding out slightly, and I'm now adding some purple. So it's totally up to you. You can add some very darker versions of the shadow, or you can add some lighter color tones like deep dark saturated color tones, just to bring out the shadow. Now this looks something like a soft malleable shadow, and I'm really satisfied with the shadow. You can always go with the dark, very black, monochromatic shadow, or you can create some kind of like play with this. So now the purple color is sort of like looking like darkish reddish tinge of the reflection of the apple, because apples normally have like a very shiny surface. So whenever shiny objects are placed on a floor, they not only cause shadow, they don't only create shadows, but they also create reflective highlights onto the shadow that come off as like the shiny object bleeding off color into the shadow or nearby area. So I have now added that. I'm now trying to play around with the highlights from the right side, and I think that's about it. I'm going to create a copy of the signature layer, because we created the signature and I don't want to actually spend time writing my signature again, although it's always a good practice. But since we already have the signature done, we're just going to change the date. So I'm going to go to menu, I'm going to turn on the layer, and since the layer is now turned on, I can duplicate the layer with the signature. And if you look at it, this looks like an orange now. I mean, like you have now an orange and an apple, and the branch also works for the orange. So maybe in the next year we might also do apples and oranges. We'll do two assignments on digital illustration, one with apples and one with oranges. So I'm going to create another set layer. I'm going to write apple or apples, apple 01. And that's the apple layer. I'm going to now quickly drag and drop all the layers in sequence on top of each other. The ones that I want, I'm going to change the date. Okay, so and here we go, the changing of the date using the eraser tool. Adjusting the brush sizes. So it's the 30. Oh, sorry. Is it the 30? Oh no. Okay, so 2019. Oh no. Let's write 31st slash 1 dash 1 dash 2019. And there you go. So that's it. Now let's look at the drawing. I mean, I must say, really good job. Not bad for someone who has a drawing block right now, cartoon illustration block. So I'm going to save this file as JPEG image. I'm going to change the name Apple. If I didn't, then it would have overwritten on the existing sphere file. And I guess that's it. Look at the file in the desktop folder, and that's pretty much the apple, the branch. Let's go back to the file, and hope you liked this tutorial. Next time we'll come and we'll work with character orthographs, and I'm going to give you some guidelines. You can play around with those guidelines, and do not forget to actually follow our YouTube page. It's Comic-Con PK, and this is it. We teach comic books. We teach how to make comic books. We do some artist interviews. We also have these wonderful pages of Comedy Fest PK. And oh yes, before we sign out, I would like to mention that today, or like tomorrow, it's today now. So tomorrow is Munnu Bhai's death anniversary. It's been 1 year since this great writer from Pakistan passed away, and we will be giving a tribute to him, and we've gotten a chance to maybe like animate some of his stories. So there's like a memorial service being held at Alhambra at the mall. Those of you who get a chance to go through his work, do so, and maybe let us know if you want something done animated